he does not give a single shred of a damn about Charlie Kirk. He doesn't care about anybody else. He just wants vengeance. And it's not even vengeance towards those who have wronged the Charlie Kirk. They're just farming this. They're just farming Charlie Kirk's to try to get as many people on board with what comes next. A political agenda that is objectively unpopular. But before we get to that, let's get started. Don't get it twisted. Rapture talk is something that we're going to be covering as well. But first and foremost,
we're going to begin with
conservative activist Charlie Kirk was remembered by thousands at the memorial service. And it started off as like a regular ass Christian memorial. It started off with like, talking about how godly Charlie Kirk was, how good of a Christian Charlie Kirk was, and how wonderful of a person Charlie Kirk was. Then they slammed a little bit of Christian rock in between. We didn't watch any of that stuff because that stuff is like really boring for me. And then very quickly, I think there was a pivot when Benny Johnson went on stage. And once Benny Johnson went on stage, it turned into a revenge tour. We're going to do revenge on them. Who is them? Anyone and everyone that's ever been like, I don't really fuck with the Republican ideals, dog. That's it. That's basically what it is. Okay. That is precisely what is going on here. They just turned this into a massive political rally to talk about how they're going to enact revenge on the enemies of the administration. The reality of the matter is, I don't think a lot of political normies who even found themselves on the conservative side think that this is appropriate. I'm gonna map out the average American's position for you, okay? Do you want to know what the popular position on this is? I know it sounds self-serving, but it's the position that I hold, which is no one should be for their political opinions, obviously, duh. Political violence is unacceptable, duh. And also, I don't really fuck with Charlie Kirk's political positions in general. I think those three things are literally like, if you want to understand what the average American's perspective is, it's that. I don't really know a lot about Charlie Kirk, but the things I've seen, I'm not too fond of. And also, I don't think he should have been killed. Okay? Anyway, but let's see how the media is covering it. And then I'll talk about how dangerous it is, in my opinion. The blanket idolatry that you are seeing, both from Fox News, which is expected, but also from regular mainstream news as well.
The news, though, the highly emotional and often spiritual memorial service for Charlie Kirk, the influential conservative activist and organizer, where tens of thousands of people packed into Arizona's NFL stadium yesterday for an event that had so many people, thousands more could not fit inside that giant arena. President Trump and members of his administration offered tributes to Kirk as a friend and also tributes as a political ally. And in one of the ceremony's most powerful moments, Kirk's widow said she forgives her husband's assassin. Chris Van Cleve was...
This was like a powerful moment, probably the most powerful moment, but then immediately it just got redirected back on this narcissistic vengeance quest that Donald Trump is on. Like, she went with the I'm a Christian, and obviously as a Christian I believe in like redemption. I believe in forgiving everyone no matter how horrible their sin is. And then immediately Donald Trump came in and was like, fuck that. I hate everyone. I'm going to kill people. We got to deal with the left, the political left. Anyone that's ever said I am mean must go to prison. I do not care.
At the stadium,
I'm going to solve autism. Like, perfect opportunity for Trump to be Trump, no matter what.
Was inside for this event, and this morning he is at the Phoenix headquarters of Kirk's political organization, Turning Point USA. Chris, good morning.
Well, good morning. Kirk could be a polarizing political figure, but most of the focus of his memorial was on his deep Christian beliefs, many of the speakers likening the service to a religious revival. In an emotional tribute Sunday, Erica Kirk spoke of the devout Christian values she shared with her late husband, Charlie, and offered these words to his assassin.
On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Now, the CEO of Turning Point USA, the conservative organization her husband founded, Kirk pledged to grow the movement and encouraged young people to step into their faith.
The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love.
Moments later, President Trump, the event's headlining speaker, struck a different tone.
That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent.
The president spoke on a wide range of topics for more than 40 minutes and called Kirk's death
But she wants the penalty, Lamau. What bullshit? No, actually, she gave an interview to the New York Times the day prior, and they straight up asked her, like, do you want the penalty? And I'm pretty sure she said no. Like, I'm not saying this so you think that, like, so you love Erica Trump or something, or Erica Trump, sorry, Erica Kirk or something. But she dead ass hit the Christian line bar for bar. Like, it was definitely surprising. Now, do I think it's because she is what do you call it? Like, do I think it's because, like, she, like, would she have the same attitude if it was like a trans shooter or whatever? I don't know. But this quote is quite something. Erica Kirk on whether she wants the penalty for her husband's. She added, I've had so many people ask, do you feel anger towards this man? Like, do you want to seek the penalty? I'll be honest. I told our lawyer I want the government to decide this. I do not want that man's blood on my ledger, because when I get to heaven and Jesus is like, an eye for an eye, is that how we do it? And that keeps me from being in heaven, from being with Charlie. I will say, well, look, you just got to take it. You just got to take whatever these guys present that is a little bit different and marginally off the trajectory that the ship is heading in. Okay, I'll take it. Anyone that at this moment says, like, hey, we shouldn't be focusing on revenge, we should be focusing on a mission of love or whatever, no matter how hollow, no matter how empty, I'll take it. Maybe some Christians heard that, you know? You see what I'm saying? Because, like, Donald Trump is the fucking Antichrist, okay? The way Donald Trump moves is straightforwardly, the way that Donald Trump moves straightforwardly is like the Antichrist, okay? He does not give a single shred of a damn about Charlie Kirk. He doesn't care about anybody else. He just wants vengeance. And it's not even vengeance towards those who have wronged the Charlie Kirk. They're just farming this. They're just farming Charlie Kirk to try to get as many people on board with what comes next. A political agenda that is objectively unpopular. A political agenda that is objectively unpopular by the right as well. Because targeting political dissidents has been a major fear of the right. I'm not talking about, like, the right in politics, the right in positions of power. I'm talking about, like, regular ass people who consider themselves to be conservative, who vote for the Republicans. Like, that is a real point of contention for a lot of people, and a lot of Americans, regardless of background, actually do love the First Amendment. Now, during the McCarthyism fears, there was obviously a political objective to destroy any sort of political organizing on the left, socialism, communism, the Red Scare, as you guys know. And there was a lot more appetite for this kind of authoritarian behavior from the government than I suspect there is right now. That's the difference. The difference is, if we're talking about, like, will they be able to garner enough? Will they be able to farm enough anger and resentment to get fully on board with this vengeance quest that they objectively throw aside, like, the First Amendment with no fears of repercussion that might come in their direction down the line? And I don't know. I don't think that that's the case, because the enemy from within narratives don't necessarily work as well unless there is a clear-cut enemy externally. So the Red Scare worked when we were doing the Cold War against communism, against communist USSR. And do a lot of people hate China in America? Absolutely. But there isn't the same level of unconditional hatred for China and an ideological hatred for China as it existed, I think, against the USSR during the Cold War, during the peak of the Cold War. For punishing political dissidents in this country in this very moment, while the middle class is being shredded, while people are obviously experiencing a lot of economic hardship, is not going to be a super politically convenient move. Do you see what I mean? Whereas if there was a robust middle class with at least some labor protections and whatnot, and a sense of comfort and security, they would probably be more on board with these kinds of decisions from the government, especially as they are truly fearful of their beautiful way of life being taken away from communist elements from within that are getting foreign funding from the USSR, the ultimate enemy, the enemy that is the ideological core, the ideological heart of communism and socialism. Americans right now are suffering economically, and they don't have any sort of understanding that like the future is going to be bleak if other guys actually change the mindset of Americans in general. Like, if you were to ask Americans right now in this very moment, like, do you want to vote for a guy who's going to give you free healthcare? It would be massively, massively popular. Okay? You're like if an uncle who yaps into the night got podcast equipment. Thank you. I think there is a lot of discontent and there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty in the hearts of many Americans. And I'm not so certain that the administration can successfully redirect that anger and animosity back to, left elements within American society. They're trying to do that with Charlie Kirk by memorializing Charlie Kirk as this beacon, as this vessel. But again, while he was known by many, especially older people, right? His opinions and his worldview wasn't necessarily so popular as this administration presents it, because this administration is not as popular as they want to be. So they're basically presenting a false narrative here by cynically weaponizing Charlie Kirk's assassination to make it seem as though their opinions are incredibly popular and everybody loves it. And it's just this like left narrative that wants violence and wants to kill people for being godlike, for being Christian-like. And that's simply what this is, for wanting to have a family, that kind of thing. As I've said time and time again, only weak administrations behave in this way to punish political dissidents. If you are strong, you would not feel the need to do things like this. So that's where we're at. And I'm not so certain that this like war on Christianity style narratives are going to be super successful in getting enough people on board with the persecution of leftist and liberal voices and leftist and liberal people alike. So yeah, let's continue.
Attack on the entire nation.
The gun was pointed at him, but the bullet was aimed at all of us.
Several members of the president's inner circle and cabinet spoke Sunday as an overflowing crowd packed State Farm Stadium, the largest venue in Arizona, to celebrate Kirk's life.
Now, our whole administration is here, but not just because we love Charlie as a friend, even though we did, but because we know we wouldn't be here without him.
The 31-year-old Kirk's rise to prominence was fueled in part by his debates with students on college campuses across the country. He became a mainstay on the campaign trail and galvanized young people to vote for President Trump.
You know, I watch Charlie Kirk's videos pretty much every day.
Once again, this narrative, as I went through it piece by piece, is also not correct. This narrative is incorrect. This is a false reality that mainstream media is presenting. The evidence actually backs up the opposite of this, okay? And this is something that I already mentioned. The notion that like Charlie Kirk was anything beyond a nominal figure in this, massive swing of the Gen Z vote in the direction of Donald Trump was already one that I was scrutinizing, was skeptical of. But it turns out there are more polls that came out after his demise that show that he actually did not have a major impact whatsoever. He did not have a big impact on this at all. Now, the reason why I say this is because, one, the initial reason as to why I said that this was not like, this was a consequence of systemic factors was because the Gen Z vote has already swung back in the opposite direction. The Gen Z approval has swung against Trump pretty aggressively over the course of the past 8 months. Okay? And Charlie Kirk was still very much in operation during that time. And yet he was unable to keep the base of support on Gen Z support for Donald Trump. Okay? But outside of the polls that we have consistently looked at, the new polls that came out specifically around Charlie Kirk show that many people know who Charlie Kirk is, especially on college campuses. 90% have heard of Charlie Kirk, but 70% don't agree with his worldview. And it's more so just the older population, 45 plus, and especially 65 plus, that actually like Charlie Kirk's worldview. And it makes sense. Of course it makes sense. These are very conservative values. There's a lot of Gen Z that are going to take issue with this because they were born into a very different reality. Hasan, you help legitimize people like Charlie Kirk. What is this? Chinese state capitalism has overtaken Western capitalism. That's what this is really about. The U.S. is desperate to change the rules. Whitewashing Charlie Kirk is going to be difficult when his racism, misogyny, and bigotry is online for the world to see. Hasan, you help legitimize people like Charlie Kirk. Stop it. Yes, I did, famously. No, you're absolutely correct. Debating fascism is great. No, you're right. The president didn't legitimize Charlie Kirk. It was actually your favorite Twitch streamer that did this. Yeah. No, this makes a total sense, actually. You are the smartest leftist and the most woke, I think. This is just a different version of saying, why are you platforming Donald Trump? You did play a part. Damn, don't be sensitive. I'm not being sensitive at all. I just think you're fucking stupid. I think you're mistaking me making fun of you for some kind of sensitivity because you think you got me. No, I just think you're dumb. This is a dumb take to have. There are better people that you can present as me actually platforming them, even if it's by accident. Charlie Kirk is not one of those people because his platform grew completely outside of my my control. Like, it's ridiculous. Okay. All right. Well, as far as platforming people goes, I think you guys know my assessment on this. Once a figure is no longer just like a irrelevant figure on the sidelines, no matter how ridiculous their ideas are, if their ideas have become normal, if their ideas are becoming normalized, there is use in tackling those ideas directly. Okay? Didn't Charlie Kirk blow up well before you as well? No, we blew up at the same time, but he blew up to a completely different proportion in comparison to my career. A better example of this is Nick Fuentes. Under no circumstances is it worthwhile to debate a Nazi. Debating a Nazi is like debating a flat earther. You have to learn all of the insane conspiracies that they believe to be adept at tackling said misinformation. And also, in most circumstances, the goal is not to arrive at a truth for the Nazi. The goal for the Nazi is to specifically have a microphone, a platform, so that people hear them trolling, right? And while that is the case for someone like Nick Fuentes in the past, when he has no platform whatsoever, I think it's like completely irresponsible to offer them any fucking any microphone whatsoever. Okay, once it gets to a point where that is the normal attitude, that is becoming, when he becomes like a mainstream household name, then you have to tackle it. That's it. This is why I was very, very aggressively criticizing Sex Pestany for straightforwardly giving Nick Fuentes a platform when he was completely irrelevant. Okay? It was one of my biggest mistakes as well. Didn't you debate Fuentes in 2019? Exactly. No, I did. And it was a last second switch up, and I did not like that at all. It was way back in the day. And I think that played some role. This is something that I'm, something that I've talked about quite a bit. It's a mistake. So, also watching and deconstructing their arguments is literally the only way to move the compass in the other direction for some people. Yes. Luckily, it actually didn't, elevate his platform or status at all. Especially because back then I didn't have a major platform myself. But these last 2 years have been a very different ball game, right? Yeah, my reach in 2019 is not even remotely comparable to my reach now. So, anyway, let's get back to the Trump or the Charlie Kirk Memorial.
Brittany Hegberg traveled to the memorial from Minnesota.
I thought that he really stood up for what he believed in, and I really admired that a lot, and I think the world needs more of that.
Kirk's positions were not without controversy, but his death sparked widespread outrage and heartbreak, and his allies said Sunday it had immortalized him.
You have no idea the dragon you have.
This, by the way, this speech, verbatim, from what I understand, it sounded really strange. And I covered it at the time in real time. It sounded weird. It sounded kind of like a Nazi speech. From what I understand, it quite literally was a translated speech from Goebbels. Like, different aspects of the speech were damn near identical to both Japanese fascist speeches and also Goebbels talking about Horst Wessel as well, which I'm going to cover. But the storm is coming. Yeah, here's a side-by-side. There's we'll obviously look at this as well. I hope they lean into wicked and wickedness, since literally part 2 of the Wicked movie showcases terms. What? Wicked and wickedness. This accurate, near verbatim translation of key passages from Joseph Goebbels' speech titled "The Storm is Coming," original German, Der Sturm bricht los, delivered on July 9th in 1932 in Berlin. This was a campaign rally speech in the lead up to the July 31st, 1932 Reichstag elections, where Nazi Party achieved its peak pre-1933 electoral success. Goebbels, then the Nazi Gauleiter of Berlin, used the speech to rally supporters by invoking the martyrdom of Horst Wessel, a young Nazi stormtrooper killed in 1930, later mythologized in Nazi propaganda as the author of their anthem, "The Horst Wessel Lied." Wake up, America, this user says. I brought up the Horst Wessel comparison the first day, and it is very clear that, like, Stephen Miller is very familiar with this. Horst Wessel Lied. Horst Wessel Lied. He looks exactly like Goebbels. I'm uncomfortable. What? Stephen Miller, who is genetically reincarnated Joseph Goebbels, will be speaking at Donald Trump's rally in Madison Square Garden. Can't imagine an uglier stain on U.S. history. Let it be the Nazis' last gurgling gasp. Yeah, that didn't happen. Oh my God, he does look like. Oh my God, what the fuck? Stephen Miller is also Jewish, by the way. For those of you who don't know, obviously that hasn't stopped him from leaning into this Nazi shit, though. Let's be real. But I guess it's a sign of the times that American fascism is more diverse than previous versions of fascism, and a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people have a hard time coming to terms with that. I mean, he has been quoting prominent Nazis for quite a while now, but this one was pretty. This one was like pretty. The comparison is just, it's no longer a dog whistle. It's more so a fucking bullhorn.
Awakened, you have no idea how determined we will be to save this civilization, to save the West, to save this republic.
So let's start off right there. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I briefly covered the Horst Wessel comparison in the past, like in the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination, saying how I was worried that the Republican Party would basically use this as an opportunity in the same way that the Nazi Party did, memorializing Horst Wessel to basically memorializing Horst Wessel to be like a rallying cry to attack the communists and the leftists and the enemies, right? Because Horst Wessel was a stormtrooper that was killed in his home by 2, I believe, Jewish communists, as a matter of fact. They walked up to his house and they shot him dead. Okay? He was a Nazi Party member. He joined the SA. In May 1926, the Viking League and the Olympia Association were banned in Prussia when it was discovered they were planning a coup against the government. Realizing the League would not achieve its self-defined mission and was moving in the direction of tolerating the parliamentary political system, Wessel resigned from it on the 23rd of November 1926 at age 19. On the 7th of December, he joined the paramilitary, the Storm Detachment, Sturmabteilung, I'm butchering all that, Storm Detachment, or SA, of Adolf Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or the Nazi Party. He later commented that over 2/3 of his colleagues from the Viking League had already joined the SA and the Nazi Party. Part of the attraction of the NSDAP to Wessel was Joseph Goebbels, the party's newly appointed regional leader, Gauleiter of Berlin, about whom he would later say, "There was nothing Goebbels couldn't handle. The party comrades clung to him with great devotion. The SA would itself be cut to pieces for him. Goebbels, he was like Hitler himself. Goebbels, he was our Goebbels." So, like, this is Horst Wessel talking about Goebbels and why he joined the SA. Okay, the storm detachment of Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, or also known as the Nazi Party. So, basically, as far as activities goes, in August 1927, Wessel traveled in a group of 50 SA men to the Nazi Party rally in Nuremberg, which he described as flags, enthusiasm, Hitler, all of Nuremberg, a brown army camp. It made an enormous impression. Wessel was with other Berlin-based Nazis making up a group of 400 led by Goebbels. At the time, the SA was banned in Berlin. When they returned, they were arrested. Wessel soon impressed Goebbels. In January 1928, a period in which the Berlin city authorities had banned the SA in an effort to curb political street violence, Wessel was sent to Vienna to study the National Socialist Youth Group and the organizational and tactical methods of the Nazi Party there. In July 1928, he returned to Berlin to recruit local youths and was involved in helping implement a reorganization of the NSDAP in Berlin into a cell structure similar to that used by the German Communist Party, the KPD. Wessel did this despite SA rules forbidding its members from working for the party. Wessel became the street cell leader of the Alexanderplatz Storm section of the SA. In May, he was appointed a district leader of the SA by Friedrich Schein, where he lived. So basically, he was as far as like the local militancy goes, he was a formative part of the stormtroopers at the time. Okay? The reason why all of this stuff is important is because it builds up to why he was assassinated. And at around 10 p.m. on 14th of January 1930, Höhler and Erwin Ruckert, another member of the KPD, knocked on the door of the room where Wessel and Janneke lived. Janneke was, I believe, a prostitute who was, or a former prostitute who became his lover, Horst Wessel's lover. While the remainder of the gang of at least a dozen men waited on the street outside. When Wessel, who was expecting a visit from the leader of another SA Strum group, opened the door, he was almost immediately shot at point-blank range. Okay? Although it was later claimed that Wessel had attempted to draw a gun and so had been shot in self-defense, this was denied by eyewitnesses who said that he had been given no time to react. The attacker searched the room, removed a pistol from the wardrobe and a rubber truncheon, and fled the scene, returning to the rest of the men in the street. The entire group then returned to their usual nighttime activities. Even as Wessel was lying seriously wounded in a hospital, Goebbels was already releasing reports asserting that those who had carried out the attack were degenerate communist subhumans. Before they had actually figured out who was responsible for the assassination of Horst Wessel, Goebbels, the propaganda minister, immediately decided to lay the blame, and this time it was correct, on the KPD. Okay? Wessel received medical attention and recovered somewhat, but eventually died in the hospital on the 23rd of February from sepsis contracted in the hospital. Following his death, the National Socialists and the Communists offered different accounts of the events. The police, led by Chief Inspector Teichmann, and several courts determined that both political and private reasons had led to Wessel's assassination. By the 17th of January 1930, the police had announced that Höhler, whom Janneke had identified as the gunman, was their prime suspects. Here it is. Albrecht Höhler, the man arrested and was later killed for Wessel's murder, wearing the new suit given to him by the Communist Party. Okay? It was then reported by a non-Nazi and non-communist newspaper that Janneke had known Höhler prior to the murder because Wessel had used her to spy on those of her former clients who were communists. The communists claimed that Höhler had been Janneke's pimp until Wessel stole her from him, and that this was the motive behind the shooting. Janneke denied these stories, saying that she had never been a spy for Wessel and that she knew Höhler only as an acquaintance from the streets. The police and courts believed her, and Höhler was quickly arrested. After a trial, he was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment for the shooting. The light sentence was a result of the court's finding of extenuating circumstances. 7 accomplices were found guilty and sentenced to jail. But this is not the main story. The main story here was how Goebbels actually in the past had looked to high-profile assassinations of Nazi party members as a way to memorialize these people and deify these figures, and also use it as an opportunity to talk about the violence that was coming from the degenerate communists and the Jews. Okay, here it is. As the Wikipedia article also correctly points to, Goebbels had been looking for someone to turn into a martyr for the Nazi cause. His first attempt was Albert Leo Schlager, a Freikorps member and a saboteur who was caught attempting to blow up a train in the Ruhr region, which was occupied by French troops in retaliation for Germany's not adhering to its schedule of reparation payments. Schlager was executed by the French, and his grave later became a Nazi shrine. There were also 16 Nazis who had died during the beer hall push, who were honored with a public ceremony every year on the anniversary of the push. A memorial which passersby had to salute was built for them in Munich. Okay, with two other party members who headed the list that the party later made of those members of the movement who have been murdered. Goebbels did not even make an effort to martyr them. Goebbels saw in Wessel shooting the possibility of a propaganda bonanza. He eulogized Wessel in his newspaper, Der Angriff, in overtly Christian tones. A Christian socialist, a man who calls out through his deeds, "Come to me, I shall redeem you." A divine element works in him, making him the man he is and causing him to act in this way and no other. One must set an example and offer himself up as a sacrifice. Well, then I am ready. Goebbels' plan was to turn Wessel's funeral into a mass demonstration full of speeches and processions of SA men in uniform, but he could not get the necessary police permits to do so, even after Wessel's sister requested President Paul von Hindenburg to relent. Wessel was buried in Berlin on the 1st of March 1930. Contrary to Nazi claims, there were no attacks on the funeral procession, even though they claimed that there were, which Goebbels claimed was watched by 30,000 people. The funeral was filmed and turned into a major propaganda event by the Nazi Party. Wessel was elevated by Goebbels' propaganda apparatus to the status of a leading martyr of the Nazi movement. Many of Goebbels' most effective propaganda speeches were made at gravesites, but Wessel received unusual attention among the many unremembered stormtroopers. In an editorial in the People's Observer, Alfred Rosenberg wrote that Wessel was not dead, but had joined a combat group that still struggled alongside them. Afterward, Nazis spoke of how a man who died in conflict had joined Horst Wessel's combat group or had been summoned to Horst Wessel's standard. The Prussian police had outlawed public gatherings and the display of swastikas at the funeral procession, with the exception of a few Nazi party vehicles. Wessel's coffin was paraded through large parts of the center of Berlin in a procession lasting many hours. As the coffin reached Billowplatz, now also known as the Rosa Luxemburg Platz, shouts out the Rosa, communist hecklers began singing the Internationale in an attempt to disrupt the event. The police were unable to prevent abusive shouts and at some point flying rocks. No major clashes had occurred, although some had written "To Wessel the Pimp, a last Heil Hitler" in white paint on the cemetery wall. In attendance at Wessel's funeral were Goebbels, who delivered the eulogy. I'm going to now look at the eulogy that Goebbels delivered at Horst Wessel's funeral proceedings. Okay? The reason why I'm saying that, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because Stephen Miller's sentiment expressed is damn near identical to what Goebbels had said and what he chose to do with the memorialization of Horst Wessel. You're really bad at German? Sorry, brother. I don't care. I am trying to basically fucking describe to you the events as quickly as possible, giving you a brief history lesson about Nazis' rise to power, and then making a comparison to modern times and how it's being utilized in a similar fashion. Please, Jesus Christ, stop hyper-focusing on this. If there is a documentary or of some sort that you guys could actually show me, that could be interesting. That could be something that I would love to see. There is one that's like a short story, obviously, about the Hearst Vessel
Or Raise the Flag is the national anthem of the Nazi Party from 1930 to 1945. The song is named after a member of the Sturmabteilung, Horst Wessel, who was killed in 1930. The lyrics of Horst Wessel Lied were written in 1929 by Sturmführer Horst Wessel, the commander of the Nazi paramilitary force, known as the Brownshirts or Sturmabteilung in the Friedrichshain district of Berlin. Wessel intentionally mimicked the military style of the Communist Red Front Fighters League in creating songs for the Sturmabteilung, hoping to provoke attacks on the SA forces, while boosting the morale of SA members. Horst Wessel was the son of a pastor and had a university education, but worked as a construction worker. In addition to leading Sturm 5, Wessel had a passion for music and even formed a brass ensemble to provide uplifting music for his subordinates. Wessel gained popularity when he led the SA attack on Fischkirch, a poor district in Berlin, on the orders of Joseph Goebbels. In truth, these attacks were just minor altercations, but one attack took place outside the tavern that the local
I can't stand you motherfuckers sometimes. This is sometimes. Okay? I can't stand you. I'm serious. Please stop, Chad. Y'all are so fucking annoying, dude.
Wait.
Jesus Christ. Lord have mercy. You are fucking relentless, dude. Just fucking lock in, brother. What happened? Look at the chat. Everyone's like, this video sucks dick. It's AI. It's bot slop. Don't do it. Blah, blah, blah. Who gives a fuck? It's a 5-minute video. Shut the fuck up.
Communist Party used as its headquarters. As a result of the turmoil, 5 communists were injured, and 4 of them seriously. Communist newspapers accused the police of allowing Nazis to escape while capturing injured communists, while Nazi newspapers claimed that Wessel was attempting to give a speech when communists appeared and initiated the fight. Following the incident, posters featuring Wessel's face and address appeared in the streets, with the slogan, "Attack the fascists wherever you encounter them." Wessel's tragic story began in 1929, when he fell in love with Erna Jenick, a Berlin prostitute. They lived together in a room on Karl Marx Allee, but the landlady, Elisabeth Somm, disapproved of having a prostitute on her property. After a few months, a dispute arose between Somm and Wessel regarding unpaid rent. Somm asked the Wessel couple to leave, but Jenick refused. Subsequently, Somm sought the assistance of the Red Front Fighters League to harass and evict them. On January 14, 1930, Wessel was shot and severely injured by 2 members of the Communist Party. Wessel underwent surgery at St. Joseph's Hospital, which stopped his internal bleeding, but surgeons could not remove the bullet lodged in his cerebellum. As a result of the incident, Wessel died in the hospital on February 23 due to blood poisoning that he had contracted during his hospitalization. As a cunning opportunist, Goebbels organized Wessel's departure in order to gain as much benefit as possible for the Nazi cause. Since early on, Joseph Goebbels had attempted several times to create Nazi martyrs for propaganda purposes. With Wessel's death, Goebbels made significant efforts to mythologize Wessel's story, even as the man lay dying. Goebbels went so far as to meet with Wessel's mother and recount her son's life story. He viewed Wessel as an idealistic dreamer. In his notes, Goebbels described Wessel's entire face being shot, claiming that Wessel said to him, "We must continue to advance. I am happy." Goebbels consulted with Hermann Göring and others in the party on how to respond to Wessel's death. In response to Wessel's departure, they declared a mourning period until March 12, during which party members and SA would refrain from entertainment, and Wessel's name would be mentioned in all party meetings. However, Goebbels' most strategic propaganda tactic occurred long after Wessel's death. At that time, he discovered Wessel's song lyrics and transformed the lively march into the Horst Wessel Lied. The lyrics condemned both the communist and conservative movements. Shortly thereafter, Goebbels promoted the establishment of Horst Wessel Lied and Deutschlandlied as the German national anthems. Hitler and the Third Reich leadership enacted laws in May 1933 that designated Deutschlandlied and Horst Wessel Lied as Germany's twin national songs. The following year, a rule required that the right arm be extended and raised in the Hitler salute when the first and fourth verses were sung. Some Nazi members were highly sensitive to the use of the Horst Wessel-Lied. One Nazi youth even stated that it was not the type of music to be played for mixed gatherings, and in a flippant manner. The song was also played in some Protestant places of worship, because certain elements of the Protestant Church in Germany had embraced the cult of Horst Wessel, constructed by Goebbels with a model resembling past Christian martyrs.
This part is also important because it wasn't just that like Goebbels saw this as a unique opportunity to also farm the Christian elements as aggressively as possible. Okay? And Goebbels was not able to Goebbels was not able to persuade Hitler to attend Wessel's funeral. Hitler did, however, speak at Wessel's grave 3 years after his death on the 22nd of January 1933 for the dedication of a memorial. The memorial, which was cubic in design, had a metal-leaning flag and a wreath on top. It featured Horst's name on the front and on the back, and the names of his father Ludwig and his brother Werner. Hitler called Wessel a blood witness whose song had become a battle hymn for millions. He said that Wessel's sacrifice of his life was a monument more lasting than stone and bronze. So it took years for this propaganda apparatus to basically memorialize Horst Wessel, but unlike the other people that Goebbels tried to turn into martyrs for the Nazi cause, this one actually stuck. Of course, we are achieving this in record time in this day and age because the information landscape is different. And I briefly alluded to this, my worries, my fears that this is what the administration will do about Charlie Kirk. And it didn't take a week for them to do exactly that. And not only was it, the Stephen Miller speech basically makes this undeniable, okay? Donald Trump's utilization of the Charlie Kirk Memorial to talk about how Charlie's last words to him were fix Chicago by sending the stormtroopers, sending the military to Chicago, things of that nature. Everyone is basically talking about, you know, Charlie would have wanted this, Charlie would have wanted that, over and over and over again, okay? Stop sending me the George Carlin clip. Fascists in the 1930s had this central trauma of seeing their friends blown apart in front of them for nothing, and their identities were warped by World War I. And this guy's dad's real estate business took a shit in the 90s, and he had to go to school with kids who weren't white. That's how he became a fascist. I guess his version of the storm of steel is when his dad had to sell his house and buy a smaller one south of the I-10 in 1998. But the similarities, needing training wheels on your cross is the perfect metaphor for the kind of performative Christianity on the right. Yeah. Did I miss the autism announcement just got here? No, it hasn't happened yet. You made Charlie millions by correctly ridiculing his pitiful salary in his early TP days. Candace was his bestie, but neither of you were invited to the memorial service. Why? I made him millions. What? No, I didn't. Also, why the fuck would I be invited? Are you crazy? Candace Owens, on the other hand, very clearly was not invited because she quickly turned around and was like, this is Israel. Israel did this. Anyway, now let's look at the key components of the speech and the similarities between what Goebbels had talked about in his The Storm is Coming speech versus what Stephen Miller said. So it starts off with, so our dead comrade Horst Wessel wrote, and we are fulfilling his prophecy. The others may lie, slander, and pour their scorn on us. Their political days are numbered. Stephen Miller said, the day that Charlie died, the angels wept, but those tears had been turned into fire in our hearts, and that fire burns with a righteous fury that our enemies cannot comprehend or understand. They promised you, workers, citizens, and creative Germans, a Reich of freedom and beauty and dignity. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. People rise up and storm, break loose. The storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength. And the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. Erica is the storm. We are the storm. You are the witnesses, the builders, the will bearers of our idea and our worldview. You are the witnesses, the builders, the will bearers of our ideas and our worldview. Our lineage and our legacy hails back to the Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry. Well, we the people have awakened. We have risen against oppression. 15 million people have joined an army of revenge. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us. You, men, women, and comrades, are the bearers, witnesses, builders, and finishers of this unique people's uprising. We have served the truth and only the truth. For 12 years, they have insulted and outlawed and slandered and persecuted us. We will achieve victory for our children, for our families, for our civilization, and for every patriot who stands with us. Not gonna lie, these things are nothing alike. It's because the entire speech is a combination. This entire speech from Stephen Miller is a fucking combination of numerous different Nazi speeches, some of which directly comes from the memorialization of Horst Wessel, but many others directly from, even down to like building the legacy. Our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Of course, no fucking Nazi is going to talk about Philadelphia in their speeches, but it's basically just like taking a lot of Nazi sentiment, talking about lineage, talking about how like white people and white people's mythology is what is at stake here, which was the exact fear that Nazis tried to instill in their folk, right? I don't understand the Philly inclusion. What do you mean? He's like tying America to the fucking Fourth Reich by saying this is a continuation of whiteness, which is ironic because obviously Rome was not a fucking continuation of whiteness anyway, but it didn't stop people from LARPing as though they were Roman, even though Romans themselves were brown as fuck and gay as fuck too. One of the most diverse empires of all time, led by the brownest motherfuckers you've ever seen. It basically ties Greek mythology and Roman mythology back to Western superior, a continuation of like the superior Western mythos. Maybe he means Philadelphia and not in America, but I think he's talking about Philadelphia as the ancient Byzantine city in Jordan. I think he's using that as a double entendre, I thought, at most. Philadelphia was a Greek city that was in Turkey. It was where we stole the name. I think he's tying it back to the founding fathers, man. I think that's what he's doing. He's saying that the United States is our founding fathers is a continuation of like the preserving force of Western civilization and whiteness. Okay. Anyway. Regardless, if you look at his attitude here, when he he talks about lineage, he talks about how they are the storm, he talks about vowing revenge for Charlie Kirk, and how similar this speech is to, and how similar the attempts are to what Goebbels did in the aftermath of Horst Wessel's assassination. Like, it's not, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a not even a dog whistle at that point. I think it's just a bullhorn. It's obviously a like from different parts as well. The storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength, and the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. America is the storm. We are the storm. Now people rise up and storm, break loose, says Goebbels in his total war speech in 1942. Hitler's first speech as chancellor. Our lineage and legacy hails back to the Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. We will defend the civilization to save the West. The richest and most beautiful areas of the world civilization would be transformed into chaos and a heap of ruins, a 2,000-year-old inheritance of the highest works of human culture and civilization. Hitler's first speech as chancellor in 1933. You have nothing. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. He possesses nothing of his own creation to which he can point. Everything that he has is stolen. Hitler on the Jews, Munich, 1922. You thought you could kill Charlie Kirk. You have made him immortal. Who live for the task? Who live for that task and who die for it? later be not only the martyrs of their struggle, but also the seed from which the subsequent harvest would come. Hitler at Horst Wessel's memorial post-assassination. There are even better, I think there are even better speeches that you can link to than this as well. I don't know, bro, seems like a reach. I mean, you don't even need to point back to the Nazis to show the similarities here. You can quite literally just present it as is. The preservation of Western civilization, about how this notion of like legacy Americans are actually upholding Western civilization and combating it from enemies from within, is identical to the Nazis, and it's just a falsehood on its face regardless. America is the way it is because it is a multifaceted and diverse country. That is one of the most redeemable factors of the United States of America, okay? That's it. You don't have to directly point it back to the Nazis, even though these guys are basically not really sheltering people about these comparisons. The themes are identical, especially because the ambitions are identical. The ambitions are identical. And in this circumstance, it's almost a one-to-one immortalization and deification taking place. It's the identical template because the worldview is identical. I don't know how you can look at the fucking situation in hand and assume that this is like in any way, shape, or form a fucking reach when you got people openly saying that they're Nazis at this point, you know? But this was before the Reichstag elections when the storm is coming was the name of this very famous speech by Goebbels. And in this speech, he talks a lot about when he's like rallying. There's a rallying cry for Nuremberg, but there are mentions of rising up and storming and breaking loose. Okay. The preservation of Western civilization, and also the immortalization of their dead comrade Horst Wessel, and following his lead. Okay. Like that's what I mean. Like it's just identical. So our dead comrade Horst Wessel wrote, "We are fulfilling his prophecy. The others may lie, slander, and pour their scorn on us. Their political days are numbered." Adolf Hitler is knocking at the gates of power. I mean, this is obviously a different circumstance because he's like post-Trump's rise to power anyway. But there is also one of my favorite versions of propaganda that has existed in all different times and all different places, which is the party hacks of the Socialist Party are suddenly remembering the people. For a decade, the illustrated magazines pictured them only in frock coats and cylinder hats at tables filled with oysters and champagne bottles. Socialists are champagne socialists. They do not care about the working class. We, on the other hand, do. Now they wear workers' caps and fill their newspapers with urgings like, "People, wake up." Well, we, the people, have awakened. We have risen against oppression. 15 million people have joined an army of revenge. They who accepted their nice suits from the Skralex, Jewish brothers involved in a major Berlin financial scandal, can hardly imagine that an honest German worker will spend his starvation wages for a decent brown shirt. They who have grown fat on caviar, who are paid 7 or 80 or 100,000 marks a year, who have spread the stink of unprecedented corruption all over all of Germany. They want to pretend they are the opposition. To the barricades, they cry. The Nazis who aligned themselves with capital and convinced those within the corporate structure that they would be the ones who actually preserve the capitalist hierarchy by force are also in the lead up, in the build up to their rise in power, in an effort to galvanize as large of a population as they possibly can, presented themselves as being pro-worker, left populist. This is something that I have pointed to over and over again. The Tucker Carlson method, if you will. The notion that they are the real defenders of the working class, that there is some honor in an honest day of work, that their enemies are actually out of touch and elitist, and the socialists are not really invested in fighting for workers whatsoever, that they're all a part of this like elite society. This speech isn't a one-to-one plagiarism, but it uses the same propaganda framework and devices, and they're doing clear dog whistles and call-outs and the inspiration. Yes. This is the turning point. Big Hitler vibes here. I mean, yeah. And you are witnesses of this Germany. You people have affirmed this Germany. And we people speak in your name. We, the leaders of this excitement movement of the millions, we come for you, the people. This is a warning sign through and through that this is a weaponization and will be used. Obviously, it's not going to be a one-to-one. There are going to be differences, right? But the reality of the matter is, adjusted to this current time, adjusted to American culture, this is as close to a plagiarized speech as you are going to get. It's that simple.
When I see Erica and her strength and her courage,
I gotta pee.
I'm reminded of a famous expression. The storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength, and the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. Erica is the storm. We are the storm. And our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion. Our lineage and our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry. Erica stands on the shoulders of thousands of years of warriors, of women who raised up families, raised up city, raised up industry, raised up civilization, who pulled us out of the caves and the darkness into the light. We'll defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us, because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble. And to those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. You thought you could kill Charlie Kirk? You have made him immortal. You have immortalized Charlie Kirk. And now millions will carry on his legacy. And we will devote the rest of our lives to...
Norm Finkelstein said that American fascism can't happen because there is no left opposition, but Norm didn't consider that the current fascist movement can just manufacture the opposition on the minds of their followers. Conservative mass psychosis. I think Norm has gone back on that anyway. I think not only can they design an enemy from within, I don't know to what degree of success they can actually achieve this. Because when I first saw this speech yesterday, I said, this is the type of like nerdy Nazi shit that I don't think Americans respond to super positively because they're too self-involved and too self-invested. Like, fascism requires militant organizing, okay? Diligent organizing. It requires a level of discipline that many Americans simply do not have. It requires an ideological investment that many Americans simply do not have, because the time frame that Americans currently exist in is one of complete capitalist domination. Capitalism has designed a system that has made people servile. Capitalism has designed a system that makes people feel comfortable even when they are experiencing discomfort. And therefore, people are too invested in their treats and too invested in their own societal obligations, their work requirements to actually get together and engage in any sort of collective action, whether it be in the wrong direction, whether it be in the violent direction, such as fascism, or whether it be in the right direction, such as socialism. So the very same exceptionalist and individualistic forces that have captured the attention of every Americans, that has played a formative role in destroying labor organizing and labor militancy in this country, with much success also due to systemic factors, of course, due to oppression and suppression historically. But those very same individualistic, idealistic notions are also, I think, disrupting any sort of fascist organizing. Poopy Pee-Pee Man came back and said, you talk about capitalism literally every day, bruh. Give it a break. Poopy Pee-Pee Man, how could you do this to us? You are some of our best. Okay, you represent the best and the brightest of this community, Poopy Pee-Pee Man. The fact that you could come in here and say, give it a rest, bruh. You talk about capitalism every day. It really hurts my soul to see such an important figure of this community come out like this. A real shame. We have fallen. We have fallen, ladies and gentlemen. This is a deep betrayal from Poopy Pee-Pee Man, who in the past we have described as a pillar of this community. I am disappointed. Big man. If you cannot trust Poopy Pee-Pee Man to be your comrade, to be your ally in your time of need, who can you really trust? Shame. Shame on all of us, and shame on myself first and foremost for letting it get to this level. Let's continue.
Finishing the causes for which Charlie gave his last measure of devotion. You cannot defeat us. You cannot slow us. You cannot stop us. You cannot deter us. We will carry Charlie and Erica in our heart every single day and fight that much harder because of what you did to us. You have no idea the dragon you have awakened. You have no idea how determined we will be to save this civilization, to save the West, to save this republic, because our children are strong, and our grandchildren will be strong, and our children's children's children will be strong. And what will you leave behind? Nothing. Nothing. To our enemies, you have nothing to give. You have nothing.
So the question that was on my mind, at least, is who's this motherfucker talking to? Right? Who's he talking to? Because this was, especially after Benny Johnson spoke and like Jack Posobiec, who's also a fucking white supremacist, spoke, like the speeches shifted to attacking the enemy, right? Attacking the enemy over and over again. We have non-believers. We have enemies amongst us. They are responsible for Charlie Kirk's death. They celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. They want to kill all of you in the same vein that they killed Charlie Kirk. Like, they just kept repeating this position over and over again. And as I've described already, the normie position on this is basically either not knowing who Charlie was prior, or at least being kind of aware of what he represented, and roundly criticizing political violence and this assassination, of course, while also simultaneously admitting that those who at least knew his worldview were not totally on board with it. And it makes sense, because a lot of people are not totally on board with this administration either. And Charlie Kirk was a shrewd and cunning political operative for Donald Trump. So the way that the population feels about Donald Trump and the things that he has done so far, that's the way they felt about Charlie Kirk's worldview as well. And it's not like Donald Trump is this incredibly popular political figure. And what Grindr out in the last 24 hours, I don't know if this is real or not. I've been seeing this a lot. I mean, I suspected that this would happen. It does not shock me even a little bit. So while there is no, with the exception of like, I don't know, people on TikTok or whatever, there is no like official party apparatus on the left or on the liberal side that said, this is awesome, this is wonderful, we want more of this or anything. That hasn't stopped these dipshits from laying the blame squarely on the left and claiming that it is actually the left that killed Charlie Kirk. And when they say the left, they don't just mean like people like myself. They don't mean people like the members of this community. They don't mean like DSA, PSL, and the like. They mean every single person that has looked to this administration's mass deportation initiatives, for example, and said, that sounds a little fascist, man. I don't like that. And when you look at the actual polling on this, you realize that that is actually the majority position. So what they're talking about is that the majority of the American public is actually an enemy that that was excited at the prospect of killing Charlie Kirk, with, of course, a false presentation of Charlie Kirk's worldview and a false presentation of what Charlie Kirk was doing to begin with. Talking about, how he was the champion of discourse, talking about how he wasn't simply cutting SJW-owned compilations, but instead trying to do free speech and free discourse and back and forth to arrive at the truth. And people didn't like that his arguments were so powerful, they ended up killing him. That is the way they're designing this, okay? That is the way that they're designing this. I am not so certain that this will be successful in terms of galvanizing the public for what comes next and giving them enough appetite for this administration to basically turn around and punish all of the political dissidents. I hope you get banned, says Shosh 24/7. With the exception of a couple of people like this who are extremely brain poisoned online, I am not so certain that normies will be on board with this kind of thing. Now, of course, this is also this propaganda has also been regurgitated by liberal outlets as well, whether they are afraid of Donald Trump coming down on them aggressively, whether it's coming from a place of fear or coming from a place of acceptance and compliance, it does not matter. They have also played a formative role in trying to design Charlie Kirk as a martyr of free speech. I think this is damaging, and I think this is, while I still think that it won't achieve the success that his administration wants due to the factors that I mentioned about like American individualism and whatnot, it's not stopping them from attempting.
Nothing to offer, you have nothing to share but bitterness. We have beauty, we have light, we have goodness, we have determination, we have vision, we have strength. We built the world that we inhabit now, generation by generation, and we will defend this world. We will defend goodness, we will defend light, we will defend virtue. You cannot terrify us, you cannot frighten us, you cannot threaten us, because we are on the side of goodness, we are on the side of God.